and a very warm welcome to Berlinale Talents. We're very happy to start this day of public talks today with a very special guest. Warwick Thornton is back in the festival, premiering his new film Wolfram in Competition. You might know his other works like Samson Delilah or Sweet Country, so we are excited to have him as the director and cinematographer back. I know we also have our cinematographers from the Berlinale Talents program here, so I think it's a good example, this talk, also to bring in the crafts and also the visions of our director here. So please give a warm welcome to Warwick Thornton and our dear moderator, Marjorie Bandak.
How are you? A room full of talented people. Oh my God, how exciting. We have to make a deal that I'll talk today, but in 2 years' time, I'll come and sit in the audience and you can talk up here when you have your first films, yeah? Yeah.
Indeed. So, welcome, Warwick. Reframing stolen narratives. Warwick Thornton's work doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't over-explain itself all the time. It asks us to sit and look and confront things that how things have been erased or distorted. For filmmakers, his career is a reminder that your perspective matters, as he just said right now. That form is political, and how you frame a story can shift how the truth gets to exist on screen. And we're going to talk about authorship, we're going to talk about responsibility, and as well what it means to claim the frame. Before we start, I would like to begin something I learned when I was working with Berlinale Native. I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting here in Berlin, which is a place with its own complex and layered histories. Conversations about stolen land, stolen narratives resonate differently depending on where we are standing. And I want to acknowledge Warwick's Kaytetye country in Central Australia, which grounds so much of your work.
Thank you.
So,
sorry, I'm slightly hungover. I met up with the writers of the film last night, and you know, writers, the only way to hang around writers is to drink red wine. You know what I mean? It's sort of character, arc. It's like, fucking, you know what I mean? So you just get, the only way to survive sitting with writers is to drink. So I'm slightly hungover. I hope you don't mind.
I bet half the people here might be in the same stage, so it's going to be a great conversation. All right, today it's not going to be so much about the film because the film is premiering tomorrow at the festival here, but it already had its world premiere elsewhere. Let's start by the beginning. Like, you grew up in Alice Springs. Yeah. How did you get confronted with images and with cinematography at the beginning?
Oh, God. I don't know.
Come on.
I don't know. I started as a DJ, you know, at a radio station at the age of 16. You know, I left school very early because teachers didn't like me and I didn't like teachers. So it was kind of mutual. So I left early and became a DJ. But the radio station I worked at, they had a video unit. Because we come from an oral history, we don't have a written word. We have a sign language, a universal sign language in Central Australia, but we don't have, you know, a written word. So the way that we would communicate was, you know, VHS. You know what I mean? We'd you know, make magazine programs, but on tape, and the tape would be sent out to communities, and people would watch it rather than it being, you know, a newspaper in print, because people are illiterate. You know, we have a massive oral history. You know, our storytelling is so important to us because that's knowledge, and passing down stories orally was really important. You know, and it still is today for Indigenous people in Central Australia. Well, you know, Indigenous people worldwide, actually. You know, not being exclusive. And they started a video unit, and I used to sit there and play records and watch the video unit go off into the, you know, into the horizon and come back with these amazing stories of these places they had been and people they had interviewed and videoed and all that sort of stuff. And I said, I want to do that. You know what I mean? I'm sick of having two record players and a microphone. You know what I mean? So kind of where it started. Does that make sense? Yeah.
For sure. And when did you think for the first time that you wanted to tell your own stories from your own people on
I think I was
screen?
forced into it. I was forced into it by the radio stations. Like, right, you got to grab that camera and start recording things. And I was quite young, 16, 17, and they wanted a point of view from a younger point of view. And I don't know if I had a point of view then, you know what I mean? It was just sort of like doughy-eyed in the headlights, and you just were forced to do things because it was important for you to do it, and you had no time for fear in a way, you know what I mean? Go and do interviews with young people about young issues. And that's kind of when my voice started, But, we had television, we had cinema. I grew up on Jaws and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So it took me a while to find my voice, you know what I mean? Because I wanted to make Star Wars or Jaws or, And it took me a while to realize that actually I had something unique that Mr. Spielberg or Mr. Lucas didn't have, you know what I mean? Something that's actually, it's unique, this Indigenous perspective. And it took, I'm still trying to find that Indigenous perspective, The way I see it is that, when you look at a film like The Searchers, the whole thing's from a veranda, and this fear of the lawlessness, out there over in those hills. And the perspective has always been on the veranda and being afraid of what's over there in the wild. And then I realized actually my perspective is over there in the wild, looking at the veranda and being afraid of what's on the veranda. You know what I mean? What's happening in that house is, as an Indigenous person, is what is the fear. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing wrong with the wilderness, and they call it the lawless, a place of no law. And actually, Indigenous law is so strong. You know what I mean? It's this white perspective of keeping that thing as fear. So those filmmakers were making their films from the veranda, being scared of what's out there, and I realised that I was making films about what's from out there, looking at what scares me on that veranda. Yeah.
And you really, the first thing you did was grab a camera, and you're always speaking about point of view. So you had an extensive career as cinematographer before you started directing.
Yeah. I love cinematography. Directing's painful. You know what I mean? Cinematography is like, ego, you know what I mean? Look at me, I'm amazing, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, it's 5.6, I use this lens, all that kind of. And then there's directing, which is this trauma and pain. So it kind of balances, you know what I mean? I'll do the hard directing only if I can shoot it and have fun. That's kind of the way I see cinema and storytelling that way, yeah. Yeah.
And what would you think is like for you the basic skill that you needed to learn to become a cinematographer? Like handcraft wise?
Yeah, it is a craft, excuse me, and it does take time. And you have to learn it, it's not, I wasn't some boy, girl genius. It didn't happen that way. It actually was a hard slog of learning and studying and asking a lot of questions to, older cinematographers, people I really looked up to, and then giving me answers. It took a long time. And then it generally just becoming relaxed about it and looking for the soul of the scene and you know what I mean? And not second nature. It's always going to be hard, you know. But I think I've relaxed now as a cinematographer, and I can have fun, and it's less about being the wanker, you know what I mean, and having the most amazing. You know, the best. I was taught that the best cinematography is the cinematography you don't see. You know what I mean? If you watch a film and then you see this, you see a shot and you go, how did they do that? Well, that's a disaster for me, because you're actually not watching the film anymore, and you're not in there with the characters, and you're not in there with the story. You're back in your seat in the cinema, trying to work out technical issues, and it's kind of like that's not cinematography to me. You know what I mean? That stuff's good for your ego, but it's terrible for a film. You know?
Because you went to film school as well, and
no, I never went to film
Well,
school.
you had some. Come on. What's your perspective about this formal training side of things?
I went to the best film school in the world. It was a place called AFTRS in Sydney, in Australia, and it was just a big toy shop. And I did a lot of fishing. I do a bit of cinematography, and then I go fishing. You know what I mean? Rather than going to classes, and I just had the best time. You know what I mean? I think fishing, if you want to find patience, go fishing where there's no fish. You know what I mean? And thinking, you know what I mean? It's this, that sort of desperation as a young cinematographer of, why isn't Spielberg calling me? You know what I mean? And, you know what I mean? And that kind of, it's so painful, and you know what I mean? It's sort of like falling in love as a teenager. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, shit, what's all these emotions? And, you know, suddenly it's happening again, and it's with a camera. It's like, that's pretty creepy. You know? But it, you know, I don't know. I was a painful young cinematographer. But, you know, I just kept doing it, and people, people asked me to shoot their films, and I got better and better, and I relaxed. You know what I mean? It's trauma, but it's pain you get used to, and then suddenly you realize it's painless. Yeah.
So maybe we could take a look at a clip from your film Sweet Country.
Oh, Sweet Country.
We have a clip ready.
By the way, the two writers are over there, the bastards, who gave me a hangover. They wrote Sweet Country as well as, what's the next one? Wolfram, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you want to stand up? Where are you guys?
Yeah.
Huh? Here? Oh, I don't see you anymore. Okay.
Yeah, there they are, bastards. Yeah.
The clip. I don't know where I'm supposed to be seeing. This is a new location for talent, so I have no idea. There. Okay. The clip for Sweet Country. Anybody? Yes.
Thank you. That's actually an interesting. That's a good point about point of view. That child, Philomac, he only sits on the edge of the veranda. He never goes onto the veranda. You know what I mean? This is the white man's world, and then there's the blackfellow world out there, and the whole film, he just sits on the edge of that veranda, and he's too scared to go that way, and he gets forced to go back into that world. But his perspective is only on that veranda, and he's not allowed any further. You know what I mean? Sort of that's interesting dynamics about what you let your character do and what the character is afraid of, and simple things like that work really well. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a good one. Anyway, thank you.
And it's translating what you mean about being a cinematographer somehow into the character, into the story.
The physical space is an important thing to think about with all your characters. You know what I mean? If with an actor, you have to take a lot of control, because you go, well, you can do whatever you want, and it's like, I want to come through the window. You know, like, no, well, would the character climb through the window, or would they just open the door? Oh, no, I think they need to come through the window. It's like, so you have to control it, but you've got to always think about, well, where, Sam Neill's in that film, the wonderful actor, and he, he told me, which is it's a really good point. He says every scene he starts with as how is he going to get out of the scene? How does he escape the location? You know what I mean? It's just this mental thing that he plays with. It's sort of like, okay, I walk through the door, but how am I going to get out? You know what I mean? Do I climb out the window, or do I, you know what I mean? Do I go out the back door? Even in the scene he might not be exiting, but he's always working out how to exit. You know, that's part of his mental thing, and I kind of really like that. You know what I mean? The escape plan. What's the character's escape plan if it all turns to shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you have this. It's a constant narrative also that you have used throughout your films. This kind of like Western and escaping and placing characters in landscapes that are much bigger than their own, that they can understand as well.
Well, you know, with like a character like Philomac, you know what I mean? If he was allowed inside the house, he would probably just stand. He would never sit, you know what I mean? And even if he was asked to sit, he would probably go, no, you know what I mean? Because this is not my world, this is not my space. And that's really important stuff to keep thinking about the character and the physical, you know. If the door is open, would Philomac walk through that door, or would he just stand there and not want to walk through that door? It's really, really good things to think about the character. Or would he walk in and just sit? You know what I mean? What does that say about the character? Yeah.
Like your characters in your previous film, which was your big international breakthrough, Samson and Delilah, which we unfortunately do not have a clip for, but was more about this transgression into that other side of the world and how much they took over, like how did the world treat them that was not theirs?
Yeah, yeah. You know, Samson and Delilah is a film about survival. You know what I mean? And being a survivalist. So, actually, that's a really important thing that I kind of see in the cinema that I make. I don't like victims. I can't abide, you know what I mean? I like survivors, you know what I mean? And I think that's a really important world to think about. Is your character a victim, or are they a survivor? How do they see themselves in this world? Do they use the victim mentality to get further in life? Or do they use the survivor mentality to get further in life, or to stay strong? You know what I mean? It's a really interesting. The film that we just made with Stephen David and I, and Deb Mailman, who's an incredible actor who's in the film. Hello, Deb. There's one of the important things was that it's about children and sort of a certain serval slavery kind of thing that happened to David and my great-grandmothers, and that as children they were sent down mines to work for miners. And one of the really important things about the film is that these children don't cry. They never cry because there's no time to cry. And the concept for me was, when they become grandmothers, they can cry because they survived. You know what I mean? There's no time to cry until you've got grandchildren, and then you can have a cry. It's a really weird perspective, but it's sort of like a film where, generally if you're going to make a film about children and there's a home of a trauma, there's going to be a shitload of tears. But it's like, there's no time to cry. I was telling the kids, you know what I mean? And the kids are going, I can cry on cue, the actors, you know what I mean? I can cry on cue, watch this. And it's like, well, in this film, you're not going to cry at all. I love that you can do that, but you're not crying in this film because you just don't have time to cry because you're a survivor. You're surviving.
The crying is for the audience, I have to say.
Yeah, actually, the audience,
every single film of yours.
I'm always impressed about dragging a tear out of the audience. It's like, oh, God, I'm good. It's like, but you're an asshole. Why are you getting pleasure out of people crying? You know what I mean? It's like, it's like the weirdest concept. You know what I mean? I'd go and put you through this trauma, and I'm a great director because you're crying. It's like, what the hell?
No, but it's not that way. I see it as an audience person. There's like a beauty and a brutality that coexists at the same time that just simply reminds you of your own human beingness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big crier. I cry all the time. Fucking snots and tears, over a bloody button or anything. You know what I mean? So I'm always crying, and I think it's I think it's me. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I cry a lot, so I don't like people crying in movies, I guess.
But I guess what I would say about the crying when watching your movies is more like this idea of understanding that this is somehow reflecting a reality,
Yeah.
you know? And then you think about your own human bonds to other people, and like you said, your own children, your grandparents, what people have been going through, no?
Yeah, and there's two kinds of directors as well. There's just dismissive, character dismissive directors, and I think I'm one of them. It's sort of like, oh, they died in the film, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, they died. And then there's the other director who would do 38 takes and 27 shots, and there'll be reversals on reversals, and and there'll be point of views out windows, and the person will die for 10 minutes, and you know what I mean? And it's just milk the fucking shit out of the scene. Whereas me, it's sort of like you pan over there, oh, they're dead. Okay, move on with the story. That's kind of my version of, it's a bit brutalist, but it kind of works for me. I like dismissing big moments. I like the idea that it's just life. You know what I mean? You kind of, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with either versions, you know what I mean? That's my version. I like the idea that something that should be this big arc moment in a film is actually just happens, and you just move on because you've got no time to, especially these sort of survival films that I make.
Because time is relentless in the end of the day. Like time in moments of reality, I believe, like when somebody close to you dies in real life, you realize that the time does not stop to let you live that moment.
Yeah, and some directors will stay in the room with a dead person and traumatize you more, or like Sam Neill said, you know what I mean? What's your exit plan as a director? Well, they're dead. Okay, let's move on. Let's go and follow that bus. You know what I mean? And some other character. That's where some would spend the next 15 minutes in that room with that dead person, contemplating something else.
For a while. Yeah. And thinking about like genres, like there's no buses in this specific film that we're talking about.
It's always a spaceship. But
didn't make it to the But the Western genre, it's a genre that really deleted somehow, or just erased over the parts of like what is it really on the other side of the veranda.
Well, yeah, absolutely. History is written by the conqueror, you know what I mean? And the Wild West, or the crazy North, where we come from, you know what I mean? We have lots of statues of men with guns on horses, who opened up the country, but shot a lot of my people and poisoned a lot of my people, you know what I mean? And these are, we went through the genocide, you know what I mean? The actual trying to get rid of us, And it's kind of I'm here to kick against the pricks, you know what I mean? And to show, and same with David and Stephen and Deb, we're here to show the truth, and that's our job. And that's part of what I learned as a young person, thrusted a camera into my hands and said, go and record stories, is to fight against the colonial history who was written by the people who colonized us, and their version. Well, we've got our version, and then suddenly we've got access to that screen, and we can tell our truths, and that's really important to me. And that's a great drive, the truth, you know what I mean? And it's fiction. What we're making has massive amounts of foundations in truth, but it's still fiction, you know what I mean? But there's a responsibility to tell the truth with the fiction, the lie that tells the truth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important, and it's wonderful, and everyone has it. Everyone here has that, you know what's true, and you know what's wrong, and how do you balance entertainment and fiction, but to tell the truth so that an audience can actually learn something, and not realize they've learned something.
Yeah, the title of this talk, Reframing Stolen Narratives, what does that mean to you specifically? What comes to your mind when you hear reframing stolen narratives?
Well, we didn't have cinema, you know what I mean, traditionally, but we had our voices, I always say this is a really important thing to go through when you're about to make a movie or you're writing a film or whatever, is to just piss off the actors, get rid of them, get rid of those fucking cameras, get rid of the lights, get rid of everything until you're in a dark room and all you have, there's no light, all you have is your voice. Can you still tell that story and keep, because people are, if you're in the dark with people, they're going to be afraid. And can you warmth them? Can you make them feel comfortable and still tell that story only with your voice, with no lights, no cameras, no mongrel actors, no bloody writers? You know what I mean? Can you still tell that story? And does it still work? Because we get so sucked into the technology and the world of cinema and the tier system with actors. Oh, that person's, is number one if you want them on their poster, but that actor is number 3 in the tier system if you want them on your poster. All that kind of crap. Get rid of it all. Can you still tell that story with just your voice? And that's an Indigenous, for me, perspective, because that's all we have is our voice. We've stole the keys to the bloody cinema and we're forcing our movies onto the screens, you know what I mean? And that's, thank you. And that's exciting, you know what I mean? But can you make a film where actually you educate and you create a dialogue with the audience without them realizing that they're being, the last thing you go like that, when you're watching a movie, you go, oh God, they're trying to teach me something. You know what I mean? How can you do that without teach people, but without, and entertain at the same time, and they don't realize they learn a fuck ton about the history of your people, or a time and a place at a waterhole, or where something bad happened or something good happened, but without entertaining but actually educating at the same time is really important.
Yeah, but without being didactic, that's the key.
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
Sense.
Yeah.
And
manipulative.
Manipulative.
Yeah. Yeah.
True. It's a group process, and I really love it that how you're really always acknowledging how your filmmaking colleagues are here. Your scripts, you don't tend to write your own scripts that you make into movies.
I've written a whole mob, but they're just terrible. They're terrible films. Well, they haven't been made. You know what I mean? Because they're shit scripts. You know what I mean? But
you take over these other stories from your colleagues and you make them somehow originally yours. How do you approach that?
We should get Stephen and David.
Should they go out?
They've got a very good point of view.
Leave the room?
No, I just shut them out. I'm making this now. I'm changing everything, and I'm going to do whatever the hell. You know what I mean? And then McGregor goes, "Oh, you did it that way. Why did you get rid of that?" It's a balance. You know what I mean? I don't want to upset my brothers. You know what I mean? I do a lot. But they put up with me, and I don't know. It's a balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think with the more films you do, the more you recognise what's important in a script, what's dismissive in a script, and how to manipulate an audience, but without jamming shit down their throats. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. I want to be a writer. I've got a lot of scripts that just have never gone anywhere. You know what I mean? Well, I think they're brilliant. I'm a genius. But obviously people won't give me $5 to $25 million to make that script. Well, but for some reason they keep giving, if Stephen and David write a film, it gets up straight away. It's weird.
You did develop a story together with Kate Blanchett that you made a film that was your story?
That was a shit script. New Boy with Kate Blanchett. It was a really bad. Well, I thought it was. I'm a genius and it was brilliant, but it wasn't. And it was during lockdown, and I was talking to Kate. She was in London. I was in Sydney, and I was like, "Well, life's too short. We need to make something." And then I went, if you're going to start developing something with someone, you've got to be really careful. You've got to think about this process as, this is going to take 5 years of your life to develop something with an actor. It's going to go through multiple drafts, and are you up for that? You know what I mean? 5 years down the track, you're a completely different human being. It was a stupid idea, and then suddenly you got this actor going, "You're an idiot," and we're not talking ever again. But I had the script called New Boy, and I said, have a read of this, and it was about a priest and a child in an orphanage, and she read it, and her husband Andrew is a genius, theatre director, writer, and a genius, and just basically went, well, it's, piss the priest off and get a nun to play the role and give her, and Kate should play the role. And I was like, no. And it all worked really well. We went to Cannes, made a fuck ton of money, and
now you can make your other films.
And I worked with Kate Blanchett, and she keeps sending me Giorgio Armani suits for free. That's the thing of being with a superstar like Kate Blanchett. Warwick, do you like this suit? But sure. And then suddenly, 2 hours later, it arrives in some hotel room. It's like fucking awesome. So I've got lots of suits from Kate.
Right. It's a great anecdote, actually. And Kate's really very much invested in this stuff. And she recently launched this displacement fund together with the Rotterdam Film Festival, and very much invested in just giving voices to the underrepresented.
She's annoyingly cool. Really annoyingly cool. Those people.
Why?
So annoying. How can you be that awesome?
Well, some people, like you.
I'm looking for the crack in Kate. Actually, that sounded terrible, didn't it? Sorry.
When you're making films and directing films, do you argue with yourself internally as a director and a cinematographer?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pure conflict happening inside me, because the director thinks the cinematographer is a complete wanker, and the cinematographer in me thinks the director in me is a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? And they clash, but it's the answer is always the film. You know what I mean? The answer is the film, and the director, the cinematographer wants to do those shots that pull you out of a film and say, wow, look at me, I'm amazing. And the director goes, no, we don't want them. And it's always, the answer is there's a balance in me. They internally fight, but there's a balance that finds the rightness, the right part of the rightness in a scene. You know what I mean? What the scene is about will always be, will trump great cinematography, or, the director wants the actor to cry, the DOP wants their actor to have, every actor to have a backlight. You know what I mean? All these kind of internal monologues are happening all the time. But the scene in the film and the story will always trump anything that the director wants or the cinematographer wants. Yeah.
Cool. It's good to have this.
And the director's this ever-suffering internal thing, and the cinematographer is this wanker ego kind of, yeah, where's the red carpet, you bastards? That kind of, that's this, and it's sort of angels and devils, but I don't know which one is which at the moment. Yeah.
Depends on the moment.
Yeah, it depends on the day and how hungover I am.
Yeah. When you're making your films, you're also working with a very calm pace. You're not rushing the narrative. It always feels like everything has a very natural pace.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You see the important scenes and you understand they're important, but then what I like to do is make them dismissive. You know what I mean? That's the big turning point in the film. Well, let's just throw it away. You know what I mean? Let's don't overshoot it, don't overcover it, don't do a close-up of that tear. You know what I mean? The cinematographer wants the tear to drop at 300 frames per second and hit the ground and turn into steam. You know what I mean? And the director's going, no, I just want a fucking wide shot. I don't, you know what I mean? They kind of, that kind of.
Them crying in the background.
Yeah, they're crying over there. The audience will understand. You know what I mean? That's that world. So being dismissive of big scenes is what I really like, because I think it's the survivor mentality of a character, not the victim mentality of a character. I think is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? If it just happens over there, they're surviving. And if it's a close-up and it's shot at 400 frames per second, they're suddenly a victim. You know what I mean? That's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I'm still working this shit out. You know what I mean? I don't know what the hell's going on. Like every film's different.
The analysis comes
For some
afterwards.
reason, these two writers keep writing animals and children into everything. You know what I mean? The next film's got a fucking donkey in it. You know? The one that's about to screen. Donkeys, the horse wrangler, I talked to him, Jim Willoughby, amazing horse wrangler, you know what I mean? And he says, Warwick, you just got to understand that some days a donkey will come on the set and want to be a donkey, and then some days the donkey will come on set and will not want to be a donkey. That's as clear as it gets, you know what I mean? And that's the way you work with them, you know what I mean? And that's kind of like children, you know what I mean? Some days they come on set, they're the actor, and sometimes
You want to be a kid.
you don't want to be a kid, yeah, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And you just take your time, and I don't like to overshoot things, I don't like to overcover things. I think that's having that cinematography background of what happens is the sun rises and it sets, and there are points in the day when we can slow the sun down with lights to keep it coming in the same way. But really, it's moving and we have to follow it and we have to stay with it, you know? And that's kind of, it just happens, you know what I mean? I think that's, you don't fight it. Just walk with it, walk with the sun, have enjoy its company, not try and fight it and black it out and stop it, you know what I mean? And make it go backwards. It's like, no, it's going to come up, it's going to go down, and that's how long we've got to shoot.
It is part of the challenges that you're facing while you're making the film, but you're also challenging your audiences when you're showing them this, the kind of scenes that you're making don't always offer closure.
Yeah.
To the audience.
Yeah. Well, there is no closure, isn't there? You know what I mean? We don't have closure. You know, we have legacy. I think that's our lives are a 3-act structure. You know what I mean? We're born, we live, we die. There you go, 3 acts. You know what I mean?
True.
That's it. You know what I mean? But there is a legacy afterwards, and I don't understand that. But you know what I mean? You can still live on through storytelling in cinema. You know, you'll create a legacy that will be everlasting unless we wipe out the whole world, you know what I mean? But you'll always have a legacy when you tell stories. I find that really empowering. Yeah.
Let us watch a clip from Wolfram. Just go there. Do we have what was it, clip number 1 from Wolfram, please? Go to that.
I didn't choose these clips, by the way.
I don't know who did.
So I don't know what we're about to see. Do you reckon they're baddies? I don't know. Are they baddies?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Let's see.
Brilliant writing from David and Stephen, by the way.
Yeah, again. And the film had its premiere in the Adelaide Festival last October.
Yeah.
How was it like? How was it received?
They loved it. They were dancing in the streets and down the aisles, and everyone cried, and there was a 14-hour standing ovation.
Yes.
It was interesting because I wasn't confident at the Adelaide screening. So actually, at the Adelaide screening, and don't tell anybody, I knew that we were going to recut it. And an audience hadn't seen it, and I used the poor ever-suffering Adelaide audience as a test screening. And I'd never really done that before. I've never had a test screening because I don't really need to, because I don't have that pressure of, a big major studio needing to make a fuck ton of money. You know what I mean? The films will always pay for themselves, so you know what I mean. It may take a little bit longer for some than others to pay themselves back to investors and all that kind of stuff. So I'd never really had to do that, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not recutting it. This one I wasn't really that confident in. I wasn't sure it had been finished, and so like, okay, well, let's use the Adelaide audience as it. And then so we really felt the emotion in the room and how the energy would lift, and when it really you can feel it. That's the thing about cinema, isn't it? It's a collective experience, and there's this collective spirit of energy in the room, and you can feel it rise and you can feel it fall like a score, but it's actually the audience. You know what I mean? It's such an amazing thing, and that's why cinema will never die, because we need that in our lives. You know what I mean? We can sit at home and watch shit on an iPad by yourself, but there's something incredible about cinema and the collective soul that does this thing. So we screened the film, I felt it, I felt where the problems were. I didn't recognise the problems, but I recognised them after the screening, feeling the energy of the room. The problem was that, you know, when we edit, we used to use Steenbecks and little splicing machines. The editor, he didn't use a splicer to recut it, he used a fucking chainsaw, you know what I mean? And we completely destroyed the film, completely destroyed the whole film, and it just freaked me out. And we had to like literally rebuild ourselves. I just lost so much confidence at doing the second cut, and I lost so much. It just became fear and a lack of knowledge and strength in me to understand what the hell I just made. So we went back. It's like, right, whatever we've done, we're just throwing that on the floor. We're going back to the one that we did in Adelaide, and we'll start. So we recut it 4 times, I think.
After the premiere.
After the premiere. So, yeah. So, yeah, there you go. And it's, I don't know what I'm talking about now.
So it's like a second world premiere that you're going to have tomorrow.
It's a different film. This one's a different film to that film.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, it's a strange. I was laughing about. You know, this is maybe some sick kind of black humour, or maybe it's not. It's just human humour. Yeah, I get money off the Australian government to make films about telling the Australian government how fucked they are. You know what I mean? It's a really weird world I live in. You know what I mean? They give me money to tell them that they're idiots, or our history is full of shit and it's all a lie. You know what I mean? It's a really bizarre, you know what I mean? And I'm allowed back in my country. You know what I mean? There's a lot of directors who are not allowed back in their countries because they tried to play that game. So I'm in a really fortunate place too. And I think in Australia, through this kind of the storytelling, Australia wants this kind of storytelling, and the government wants this kind of storytelling, and they believe in rewriting history. They understand that it was a lie, and it was written by the colonizer, who they are in a way. But you know, that was our great-great-grandparents. That's not us. But you know, they want to hear this voice, and they will still let me back in my country. And I think it's a really special place.
It is indeed, and I think some countries, I mean, having the experience of working with Berlinale Native, which was a series for 8 years on Indigenous cinema here at Berlinale, we discovered how, like, some governments, like maybe Canada or Australia, are very much supportive of their Indigenous filmmakers and wanting to hear this kind of like mirroring back of the colonial times and like the pain that it has caused, and even not just historical films, but like current films. Mm-hmm. But there are still places, I mean, we also discovered films that were never allowed to be released, like in Argentina, for example, about the I don't know, like the dismantling of the whole indigenous communities over there. Yeah, breeding out the black, genocide, you know, white Australia policies, all of this, we talk about this all the time, and it's incredibly embarrassing for Australia, but you know, the truth commissions, truth-telling, there's all sorts of different versions of it. But it's a fantastic thing. Some call it woke. Well, yeah.
You know, fucking wake up then. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? It's important, and it's great. These countries that want to right wrongs.
Yeah, and I would say after having your film in Cannes and winning the Camara d'Or some years ago, also the French government, which also, let's say, has a different angle on colonial history as well.
Yeah.
And they also support your films, and they have supported your films several times up to now. Did the support from European funders change your perspective or your filmmaking or influence your production in any way?
Yeah, well, my ego got bigger after the Camara d'Or. No, you know, yeah, sorry. Self-deprecation, you know what I mean? I'm kind of into that. You know, it's like, no, I'm an idiot, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? It's fantastic. You know what I mean? And that kind of, we make movies so our print and advertising budgets are ridiculously small. You know, $100,000. You know what I mean? And you look at Wuthering Heights at the moment. It's probably $400 million print and advertising. That's not the film. That's actually just advertising the bastard. You know what I mean? They had the very different pressures. But a festival, for me, is my print and advertising budget. Because what I get out, what I give to the festival, I get back in some weird, unmonetary kind of form, but it's priceless. Coming to Berlin, being in competition is priceless for the film, because the world, I'll be in newspapers, whether you win or lose, it doesn't matter. Being in the festival and you know what I mean, gives you this print and gets you around the world without paying for it, you know? And so festivals are priceless to me. You know, they just help so much. They help the film, all the journalists who are here, you know what I mean? The social media rock stars, all that kind of stuff is just helping me. I don't have social media. I'm too afraid of it, you know what I mean? Because I'll get drunk and call you all fucking idiots. You know what I mean? So I just stay away from it. It's you know, I'm afraid of myself. So I just stay, you know what I mean? But being here just helps me so much, and helps the film and helps us get that story out. And there's a hunger for Indigenous story, but there's a hunger for good storytelling. You know what I mean? We know when we're all intelligent human beings. We know when we're getting manipulated and fucked over by a story or a director, or you know what I mean? We know when they're cheating. You know what I mean? And good on them, but that's not me. You know what I mean? And smaller films, I have a lot more freedom, but I desperately need festivals to help me with getting my film out to the rest of you know what I mean? Being here in Berlin, we'll probably be asked by about probably 40 other festivals. They won't be world premieres because that's happening tomorrow, but it'll go to 40 other festivals in the world over the next year. Here's something really important too. Be careful by making something successful, because it's great, it's fantastic. You travel the world, you go to all these festivals, you're in the desert, in the snow, all that kind of stuff. But then you'll wake up in 2 years' time in a hotel room, which looks exactly like every other hotel room you've been in for the last 2 years, and you actually haven't done anything. You haven't written anything, you haven't made another film, because you've just been rolling on this bloody film, rolling with this film, supporting the film, but you know, feeding off it with your ego. You know what I mean? You'll love it. It's I went to, you know, the laureates down your post will be amazing, but you actually haven't. But suddenly you wake up and you haven't done anything. You know what I mean?
Doing your job, your creative job.
Yeah. So like, there's a point you got to sever ties with your film at a point. In a way, you'll never be able to. But there's a point where you need to sever ties to move on to the new baby, the new gestation period, the new birth of something incredibly important to you. And you have to find that place to go, right, I'm going to give this film 3 months, and then I have to go and make another one. And no more, you know, being cool at festivals.
As the director or you know, creator, you have a creative force and you have a creative team, but you also have your producing team. And how is your production team, or how are they keeping you?
Sound recorders, David, camera operators, costume, production design. I use the same people. I love them because they can tell me I'm an idiot and we fight, but I can really quickly realize when I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Because it's not an echo chamber of yeses from the production, from other creatives. That's such a dangerous thing. They just give you what you want because you're whoever you are. These people go, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? And you know, we have that really intense relationship, and I cherish it and I need it because they're awesome. But the best way to make great films is just surround yourself with geniuses who are amazing. You can be the idiot, you know what I mean? And they support you and they look after you and they don't get the kudos, they're not here, you know what I mean? But it's just find creative people who have their own voice to be the operator, the costume designer, the production designer, the sound recorders, the editor.
Did ever your investors or co-producers, did they also have like an opinion and a creative?
No, producers have no say in nothing. I apologise if they're here, but no, just go and give me the money and shut the fuck up.
But they trust you anyway.
No, I love them. Some work in different ways. It's a lady named Cash Shelper who produced the Blanchett one, New Boy, and she produced Samson Delilah. Sorry, I was just fucking vague down. She really just leaves me alone, and it's fantastic. You know what I mean? And she just goes, "Don't worry about the budget." I'm always worried about the budget. You know what I mean? I don't want to. How can I save the production money? How can I get the money off the chair and onto the screen? You know what I mean? It's sort of like, my thing is, well, that's not on the screen. You know what I mean? It's like, that's costing 20 grand and it's not on the screen. So what the fuck is it doing, you know, on set? Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? She leaves me alone. But what she's a genius at is that there's a certain point in the edit where I just lose faith in myself and in the film, and I lose complete. You know, it all just collapses in a screaming heap of me in a fetal position in the edit suite with snot and tears, and I don't know what I've made. It's, you know what I mean? It's probably a good film. I just have to go for this phase, and I lose perspective, and that's when she steps in. You know what I mean? And she's a genius at it. She steps in and she goes, "Warwick, la 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 la. This is, I think, what you're thinking is the problem." You know what I mean? And that's when she shines. You know what I mean? And she's that pillar of foundation to just get me past maybe an assembly to a rough cut, or it might be from a rough cut to a fine cut when I'm just lost faith. You know, that I'm a fraud, I'm an idiot, this is a pile of shit.
Imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All the imposter, liar, thief. You know what I mean? Well, those wonderful character traits. And that's when she stands in and she shows me the trees in the forest, you know what I mean? Because all I see is, you know, I don't know, a mountain.
Yeah, there's this saying, like, you don't see the forest because you're busy just seeing the trees or something.
Yeah, or is it you don't see the trees?
Or the other way around, the trees because you're in the forest.
I'm seeing a mountain and she's going, "Well, there's trees there, you idiot. Just look at the trees. Just have some fun with it, you know. There's some good, beautiful trees." "No, it's a mountain, I can't move it." You know, that kind of, that's when producers become so valuable and important. Obviously, they find the money and they don't tell me how they found the money, you know, robbing banks and, you know, drug deals. I don't know, I don't care how they do it. You know what I mean? As long as I got it to make the movie. But suddenly this money rocks up, and then at the end, in the edit project process, when I'm losing faith, that's when producers become so awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But you know, you've got to watch yourself, because there's producers who will just kick you out of the edit and go, "I can direct this." You know what I mean? And they're the ones you stab out the back, and they just go missing.
No, but it's important.
They end up in the Rhine, floating. Yeah.
Like finding trusted collaborators, I guess, is like something.
Absolutely, and trust. Love and trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let us watch one more clip from Wolfram and just talk a little bit more about that film. The second clip, please.
Okay. The film, this one's a bit of a brutalist. You know what I mean? It's really bad operating, camera operating, but really good for the story. But you know what I mean? But poor old Jules, she used to be a loader for me, and then she became a focus puller, and now, because we're both old and tired, she operates all my films. And she's mortified with all that operating there, because it's fucking terrible. But it's brilliant for the film. And I'm not talking like an NYPD kind of shaky thing, but it's this really weird dance that she does. Like there's this energy from Jules, the operator, where it's sort of like, it's almost like she's documenting, not, you know what I mean? A lot of cinema is this, you know what I mean, that sort of AI perfection of the camera being operated and, you know, it being perfect, and as someone rises, the camera rises. But Jules's version is that they rise and you go, oh fuck, they're rising. Where are they going? You know what I mean? Like, even though we've done rehearsals, it still has that kind of energy. You know what I mean? And it's priceless, and I love it. You know what I mean? She's a really nervous operator, and it's brilliant. And I love her for it. And she hates me because you know what I mean? Well, can we do one more? I reckon I can get this right. And I said, oh my God, every single one has been perfect, Jules, you know? Oh no, I can get it really smooth. And I said, I don't want fucking smooth. I want, what you've given me is priceless, you know what I mean? We can't even talk, you know, if I asked her to do it, she'd wreck it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But she just wrecks it anyway, in such a good way.
So it's more human, right? Like it's broken and human, right?
Yeah, you know, and you know, that sequence there, we had a thing called a Ronin. They're slightly annoying, you know, because they're cheap and nasty, and suddenly we've lost Steadicam operators who are, you know, brilliant, you know. But if a Ronin costs you $50, a Steadicam operator costs you around about $5,000 a week, you know what I mean? So get the Ronin, piss the Steadicam operator off. But then suddenly you find yourself, you've got these two big fucking grips, and they're holding this Ronin, you know, on a hothead, one each side, and then there's Jules on the wheels, and the grips are going that way. Jules is trying to turn the camera that way, and it's just, this whole thing just collapses in a screaming heap, you know, because there's no, you know what I mean? The dance hasn't worked. It's sort of like 3 left feet, you know what I mean, are actually operating this film. And it worked perfectly for this film, you know. But that's the thing, sort of recognizing what's good for story, you know what I mean? And what helps story, you know what I mean? We get so sucked into perfection. You know that wonderful, the Japanese say the wabi-sabi or something like that. They're about the perfection is the perfection. I love that, you know what I mean? You know, and we had a fly plague. So, you know, literally every day you'd suck up a fly every 5 minutes, you know, and it got so bad that you just decided you can't spit them out, you just swallow them, you know, so you're just swallowing flies all day. But for the film, we had a fly plague, you know what I mean? But for the film, flies are awesome, you know?
It's very naturalistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
every horse did a shit, 1 million more flies came. You know what I mean? It's like awesome. And then suddenly you're doing a scene and the horses haven't shat, so that, you know, there's not enough flies, and you go, can we go and get some shit? To
feed them some apples.
To get the bloody flies back in this scene. It's like, but you know, it's finding that. You know, it's sort of, it's like, you know, writing weather. You know, it's like, I get so excited when it rains because I come from the desert, so rain is a massive celebration. And so when it rains, you know what I mean, when you get that sort of, you get stuck in this world of kind of like, well, the script says it's not raining. But rain is amazing emotion. You know what I mean? How can you use that and go, yeah, well, it's raining now, and we've, you know, we put it in, you know, right at the top of the scene. It's raining. Yeah, and then get on with it and have a really good time and use elements like that there. I think that's the cinematographer in me going, you know, you can't control it. Well, you can control it, but it will force you into how can you embrace it, and how can it be used in the story to actually make a better story? Yeah.
And also you also mentioned all other elements that you just kind of wrote in there or just directed in there, like a woman leaving some pieces of hair. But I don't want to spoil too much because the screening of tomorrow, just to make a bit of advertising here, is at 3:15 at the Berlinale Palast, and there will be 4 more screenings after that. So there's a
the opening night's sold out.
Good, but give it a try. Give it a try. You know, it's worth
1,800.
Yes.
Theatre?
Yes. Are you nervous?
I'm not at the moment. Tomorrow I'll be shitting myself. You know what I mean? I have long nails. They'll be all fucking ripped off.
You let them grow for this occasion.
I'll be going to the toilet every 5 minutes. There'll be vomit. There'll be snot. There'll be just like outlandish sort of what do you fucking mean? That's, for no apparent reason. Yeah, tomorrow's going to be horrific. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm never doing this again. I'm a fraud. It's they're going to hate it. My baby's ugly, but I think it's beautiful. But they're just going to go, oh, it's a really ugly baby, that movie. You know what I mean? All that's going to happen, and I'm going to cry, and my wife's here, and she's just going to stay the fuck away from him. He's a weirdo. You know what I mean? All that's going to happen. She's going, I'm going for a walk, and I'll go, yeah, go for a walk. I'm just going to sit here and wallow in my own misery. And then we'll have the screening. You can't preempt what's going to happen, at the screening, but at the end it's like, oh my God, I love this industry. I can't do anything else. Thank God I found cinema. It saved my life, and you know what I mean. And this glow aura of, I'll be walking that far off the ground, whether they like it or not. You know what I mean? But it'll be all over, and I'm very special, and let's get drunk, and all that kind of. That will happen. But the morning, it's like, stay the fuck away from him. He's,
Right.
Yeah.
So we will leave you alone.
Yeah.
Just maybe one final question before we move into Q&A. I think there is a possibility to have questions from the audience. When you think about legacy, Warwick, do you think you have something, like what would you say is the next thing left for you that's urgent to say regarding your filmmaking?
I don't know. I just want to keep telling stories, but I've realized that not all. You get so blinkered as a filmmaker that everything has to be a film. You know what I mean? And storytelling is so many different worlds. You know what I mean? Some ideas could be a country and western song. You know what I mean?
And that's it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's a really good idea for a film, but it's like, really? 5 years of writing that? You know what I mean? I could write that in 5 minutes as a country and western song. Chorus, verse, done. You know what I mean? Probably make more money. I'm too scared of it, and I can't sing, and I've got lots of vintage Gibson guitars, and I only know one chord. You know what I mean? But I have this, I wanted to always be a country and western singer. But that could be next. If everyone says he's a fucking terrible director, he's lost the plot, he's abusing the audiences, you know what I mean? Or if it happens, that happens to me, I can always go and write country and western songs. Or build chairs, you know what I mean? You get old, you start getting interested in chairs. You just look at that chair and you go, oh, wow, look at the design of that. You know what I mean? Oh, is that a Bauhaus? Oh, my God. That weird shit haps to you. You know what I mean?
There's a chair museum in Berlin, by the way.
Hey?
There's a chair museum in Berlin.
Is there?
Yeah.
Shut up. Maybe I'll skip the premiere and go to the chair museum. Yeah. And then I'll ring David and Stephen and go, how'd it go, mate? Yeah, it's weird. You know what I mean? There's so many. I'm pretty comfortable. You know what I mean? And I've worked out a couple of really good ideas I have, but I'm keeping them up my sleeve because I'm going to write novels.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't think they'd make great movies, but I think they could make better novels. You know what I mean? And the interesting thing about novels is if you're a filmmaker and you write a novel, you can double dip. You know what I mean? Sell the book, but keep the rights, and then make the movie later. You know what I mean? Like, this kind of, maybe it's a financial statement in a way, but and
thinking about your future.
I have this terrible. It's fucking terrible. I have this theory, and it's a complete lie. And it's like, why read a book when you can write one?
It takes much longer.
What a waker. What an absolute waker.
All right. So thanks.
Anyway, so there's a couple of stories that I've realised are going to be better books. And I've never written a book.
But you will.
It's like, well, how hard's that?
You will build a chair. You will sit on that chair.
Sit in that chair.
Book.
Yeah, and listen to some country and western that I've written and write a book.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the end of my life.
All right.
Yeah, and that's the legacy.
Beautiful.
I don't know. If cinema doesn't work, maybe it's country and western songs.
We'll listen to those too.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Warwick. And I would like to open the floor to questions. There's a couple of microphones happening here. Yeah, and let me see if you have any other questions, just raise your hand.
Oh my gosh, it's so great to hear you speak. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. And I love everything you've said about the importance of characters being survivors and not victims. I think that's amazing. And I've watched a lot of Australian cinema and how people have approached the trauma of Australian history. And I think that Sweet Country, and particularly that rape scene in Sweet Country, where you removed the light, is one of the, like for me, the most inspiring, respectful examples. And I wanted to ask you about that, about how you talked about balance and the clash of director versus cinematographer. And I wanted to know how you balance the need to acknowledge trauma of our history whilst also respecting survivors of trauma. And I'd just love to know about what you give access to the camera and where you decide to not show things and how to show that respect.
Yeah, you know, I have a problem with nudity in cinema, and other people don't, you know what I mean? And it's just me, and it's my problem, you know what I mean? And rape, you're gonna have to have a fucking good reason to have a rape scene in a film. Sorry, there's a little girl there and I'm wearing my head off, I apologise. But you gotta have a good reason for that. And that has to be absolutely pinnacle to foundation of story, and to have that for a reason. And it's such a dangerous place. Nudity, you know, as a cinematographer, I've shot a lot of sex scenes. God, they're awkward and they're ugly and they're messy and it's just so painful. And the writers, oh yeah, easy to write. Go and direct the bastard yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a real cornerstone of me of fear is to get that right and respect. And I don't know. You know, I'm a male and, you know, whatever rape scene it is or whatever nudity it is, it just freaks the shit out of me. I don't write it. Writers write it. And I get really scared, and I have to find really important things of dignity. You don't need nudity. As storytellers, we should be smart enough to do this respectfully and to be able to do it with dignity. And I don't know, yeah, it's just, we think we're good directors? Well, let's, you know, how can we do a nude scene without nudity? You know what I mean? How do you do that? How can you make, you know, you want to be good at your job? Do that, you know? And I think that's important to me. It's like, you know, tits and ass and freaking penises. It's like, oh, God. I just find the shock value to be cheap and boring. You know what I mean? And dismissive of dignity and that sort of stuff. I know a lot of actors who'd love to take their clothes off and run around in front of the camera, but it's like, can we be smarter than this? And can we actually be, how do we do this? I don't know what I'm saying, but how do we do this to be respectful? And if you think you're a good director, how can you do it how can you do it properly? Yeah.
Yeah, and being creative.
Yeah, and be creative, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Hello, sir. My name is Ivan. I'm Ukrainian.
G'day, Ivan.
I'm Ukrainian Vietnamese, so I relate very much to the issue of colonization and stuff.
Yeah.
Personally. I'm an actor, so...
You sound like one, dude.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask, like, what key qualities do you look for in the actor? And another one is, like you mentioned, that you are very open to feedback from sound designers and cinematographers.
Yeah.
Like, do you have the same attitude to your actors? Like, are you open to feedback, and do you...
I'm a bit of a brutalist. Thank you. I'm a bit of a brutalist, and I believe there's no such thing as a bad actor. There's just a bad director, because you shouldn't have cast them in that role to start with. You know what I mean? It's your fault. You know what I mean? If you can't do that character, it's not your fault. As an actor, you can't do that character. It's the director's fault for putting you in that position. You know what I mean? And that's, you know... Absolutely, but you know, I talked about, you know, if you give an actor an inch, they want to climb through the window rather than knock on the door. You know what I mean? That's natural progression of acting, and you are a very unique beast, and I do not understand you at all. You know, there was a point in your life, I know, where you looked in the mirror and you said, I can be in front of that camera. I don't need to be behind it. You know what I mean? And I just don't understand that thought. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm nothing without you. You know what I mean? And you are very unique, and I'm scared shitless of you. And I have to prepare, and I have to come to you with my vision, and I have to open myself up to what your vision of that character is, and we have to have this dance and find common ground. But good writing, you'll always be on the same page, you know what I mean? Good writing from the writer, the actor gets it, I get it, we walk into a room and we're on the same page instantly, you know what I mean? And I think that's it comes from the writing, but yeah, there's no such thing as a bad actor, there's just bad directors who put that poor bastard in that character's position, and they weren't ready for it. That's the director's fault.
All right. There was a question here. Oh, okay.
Hi, this is obviously it's from Irresistible Magazine in Australia.
Hello.
This is the Talents program, obviously from around the world. But just to go back to home to Australia, who's exciting you from the filmmaking community there? Directors, cinematographers, writers, particularly from the First Nations community back home?
I hate them all. They're competition. They actually make better films than me. Everyone does, you know what I mean? You're all competition, and I hate you all. No, there's so many amazing, I can't name names because I'll ostracize other people. It's just a special world we live in, you know what I mean? And people, see, the interesting thing is I'm 55 years of age, and I've been doing this since I was 17. And I'm an old fart, you know what I mean? And my version of Indigenous existence, you know, I'm a kid of the 80s. My version of what's right and wrong, it's very different. Well, it's similar, but it's there is a difference in the youth, Indigenous youth today, or Indigenous, in young storytellers. They have a very different perspective on the world. They grew up in a world of phones and social media, and I didn't grow up with that, you know what I mean? And so they have a different perspective, and there's only a certain amount of money in a place like Australia to go around to make movies, to make shorts, to come to come here and, you know, and to meet all other amazing people. And hopefully there will be a point when they sort of go, he's old, let's take him out the back and shoot him, and let's start giving this money to young people and getting their voices out there. And whether it's an Indigenous voice, young Indigenous people in Australia or in South America or wherever, Canada, they need their voices spoken, you know what I mean? I've had my time, and for me it's more important that money needs to go, you know what I mean? I can take all the money and make my movies, and you know what I mean? But that's gonna wreck it for a whole generation who need that money to tell their stories and their voice and their perspective on humanity, you know what I mean? So I'm really conscious of that. And I get, you know, when the budgets get into the 10 to 20 million, it's quite embarrassing for me, because that's the kind of money that can build hospitals in clinics, in communities, you know what I mean? But my mother, a beautiful woman named Frida Glynn, who's my mother, said to me, you're actually healing, but you're healing minds, you know what I mean? By telling these stories, we can have hospitals, and we can have clinics, and we can have doctors, and you know, that kind of stuff, but actually there's a mental illness as well that by making cinema can help, you know what I mean? Can help in a different way, in a different perspective. You know, which I thank my mother for, because I can still take the 10 million to make a movie. You know what I mean? But it's slightly embarrassing, but you know, there is a point where that money needs to go to a younger generation. Because, you know, we're federally, a lot of our cinema's federally funded. The government gives us some money, as I said, to tell the government that they're idiots. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And that money needs to start going to younger people. I can find money around the world from rich people. You know what I mean? I don't need the government stuff anymore, I don't think. Well, actually, producers will tell me I'm wrong, but because I don't know where the money comes from. As I said, there's probably drug deals and, you know, and bank robberies. I don't know. I just spend it. I don't know where it comes from. Hopefully that made sense.
Hello, hi.
Hey.
First of all, thank you for the amazing talk. I love how laid back you are. It's so interesting to listen to and very easy. I'm Tim.
G'day, Tim.
Nice to meet you. So when I watch your movies, they feel very real, very authentic. It's like, it feels more observing rather than explaining. And I wanted to ask, why do you think that's important and how do you do this?
Well, you know, we know the tricks of cinema. You know, you look at certain directors and how they'll milk the shit out of a scene. You know what I mean? And something as tedious as a shoelace coming loose, they can turn into the most epic, you know what I mean, movement in a film, and I just get bored shitless with that. You know what I mean? I just find that painful. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like, yeah, you've learnt your tricks and you know how to manipulate cinema and you know what I mean? But it's like, oh, what, is that important to the world? You know what I mean? And so I'm dismissive, you know what I mean? And I think that's the realism, you know what I mean? Two blokes walk into a bar or into a mining store and go, yeah, g'day, you know what I mean? And then they walk out. Okay, no worries. Are they baddies? Are they goodies? That's more important to me, you know what I mean? Now there is a clue in that scene where he goes, well, she doesn't look too wild to me, and he goes, that's my wife, you know what I mean? And that creates a small amount of tension, but it's quite throwaway. Whereas that, other directors would pause on that, and then suddenly there'd be a stare off. And then suddenly someone's going down to get, you know, are they going to get their gun, or are they going to get, you know, are they going to scratch their ass? You know what I mean? It's like, and they just milk the shit out of the scene, and then suddenly it's like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? You're great at filmmaking, but you're boring the hell out of me. You know what I mean? That's not who I am. It's like they walk in, they have a conversation, excuse my mate, he's a bit of an idiot, they leave. That's, you know, that's kind of, and that keeps, for me, a realism to stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There was okay.
And because if you milk that too much, suddenly you're creating victims, not survivors. You know what I mean? If you milk the scenes too much, and yeah, they become victims again. Close-ups are dangerous. For me, why are you doing a close-up? Are they important, or are you doing a close-up because you can? Emma.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi. My name's Ella. I'm a Korean woman from East Timor Nation down in Victoria Way.
Ah, go sis.
I just wanted to ask, I guess, because you're diving into so much trauma of our people and you're going, like, you're telling these stories and it's shining through to like so much mob watch your stuff.
Yeah.
And like it relates to a lot of them, and you have a lot of collaborators on set, I guess, who are black fellas too,
Yeah.
from all over Australia. And you're in this process for so many years. How do you protect yourself, I guess, and what kind of feelings and emotions do you feel creating this work? And I guess, how do you protect yourself and other black fellas on set too? Because you're going through like your
Trauma, yeah. Yeah.
And like, how do you protect yourself, I guess, through film, or is that healing itself?
It's I'm Alice Springs, born and bred, 80s. Wonderful. It was strange because when I grew up, we knew who the racists were. That corner shop, that bloke over there, we knew who the racists were. And then suddenly this world changed, and now we don't know who the racists are. But I grew up with this real brutalist, you little fucking bongs, you know, and pointing the finger at me, you little coon, you know what I mean? That kind of, so I kind of have a really thick skin, you know what I mean? And I have a real sort of harden the fuck up attitude, you know what I mean? It's terrible, it's tragic, is everyone cool? This is a pretty hardcore scene, some serious shit went down in history here, but we need to talk about it and we need to get it on the screen so that everyone knows the truth of what that piece of history was. And I'm a bit of a brutalist in that way. I do like to cry a lot, but I do that in private, you know what I mean? But it's kind of, you know, g'day, how you going, you know what I mean? A bit sort of Russell Crowe-y, you know, fucking, that's me. And that's kind of, I don't know, yeah, it's sort of thick-skinned, I think is what I'm saying, you know what I mean? How do I protect myself? A thick hide, yeah. And it came from that weird world of Alice Springs and racism and it just being in your face, and you just get tougher and tougher. You know what I mean?
Here.
Hello, I'm Juliana, I'm from Ecuador, and first of all, thank you for sharing your work with us today. So since you have indigenous roots, you decided to tell stories from your own communities, but what advice would you give to someone who wants to make films about indigenous communities in their own country without being indigenous themselves and without falling into exotization?
But you know, it's understanding the respect that you have to give to that community. You know what I mean? First thing, you have to be invited. Don't go making. Sometimes it's awesome that you get sort of an outsider into a world who actually sees a different point of view, which is really fantastic. And Indigenous people need that as well. You know what I mean? We have problems with our culture. You know what I mean? Right or wrong. And sometimes we need to be shown that from other people, from people who are outside of that. But you need to be invited in to have that conversation. And you need the respect of the community to actually to make stuff. You know what I mean? You need their blessing. And you need to know your shit. You need to know what you're talking about or what the point of view you're trying to do, and be open to everyone about it. You know, that's, in Australia, you know, we've, pre-colonisation, 600 languages. Each of these languages is a whole religion, a whole dance and ceremony and spirituality that's completely different to another one. There's 600 of them, you know what I mean? Well, there was. So as a Kaytetye man, I can't go to New South Wales and just walk in and pretend that I know their culture. You know what I mean? I have to know my shit. As an Indigenous person from Australia, I just can't walk into someone else's land and community and just go, oh, I know, because I don't. You know what I mean? So I have to learn and understand and get permission to walk into even another Aboriginal community and gain their respect. I have to do that as an Indigenous person, let alone a non-Indigenous person. It's all about respect and openness. And the other thing is too, you know, there's communities that need filmmakers with knowledge, need people with knowledge to help them tell their stories. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing. You just got to make sure that you're open and you know what you're talking about, and you get the blessing to do that story with them. And it's always with them, not about them, by the way. Yeah.
And there is time for one more question, and I would like to just hook onto this answer because
I'm dry.
Take it easy, so we're almost done. There's this last, there's a document from the Canadian Film Board, and it's called Protocols and Pathways, and it's a really kind of like, let's say, explanation for the Westerner, Northerner, or however you want to see, about kind of approaching Indigenous.
I could do a piss take of that. Hi, I'm Chuck Schumer. You might remember me from Dances with Wolves.
Something
anyway,
like
you're
that.
Walking into it.
Something like that. But it's interesting an interesting document.
There is a protocol booklet from Screen Australia if you're working in Indigenous communities in Australia, and you're non-Indigenous. There's booklets to about the process and the paths that you can take and what you need to understand and do. Yeah. So most film commissions have some version of that with the Indigenous people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So hopefully it's a short question. Who has the microphone?
You gave me the answer.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, thank you for sharing. I'm Felicia. I'm a German-Brazilian director in DP.
Rock and roll.
And I wanted to say, first of all, when you said that all you have is your voice, that was really beautiful. And I also really liked when you said that you don't like nudity, especially as a man, because I feel really uncomfortable when I see nudity on screen and it's not based in the script and it doesn't serve the story, because why do we need to see a woman's breast if it doesn't feed the story? And what I wanted to ask you, what is a little bit more specific, because in Brazil we are right now implementing a lot of different spiritualities we have in our film culture. And I wanted to ask you, how do you guys implement the spirituality of your communities in your work?
Oh, that's a big monkey question, isn't it?
It's not a good one for when there's just 1 minute left.
You know, we have secret and sacred. We have things that we cannot talk about. There's things that I don't know about my own community because they won't tell me, because it's secret and sacred, and I'm not in a position to have that knowledge. And I respect that, and I have to respect that. And it's important to me as an Indigenous person to respect that. There is stuff even my grandparents won't tell me because I'm not in the position of being allowed to have that knowledge. You know what I mean? I love that. I think that's really powerful. But I'm not all-knowing and all-encompassing elder of my community. There's a shitload for me to learn, and there's a shitload I'll never be told. We have two different laws as well. We have a women's law and men's law, and they are separated. And there's a whole lot of stuff that women know that I will never be allowed to know, and actually it'd be really dangerous for me to know. So if anybody even tried to tell me that, I would block my ears because it would actually get me in a lot of trouble. That is special. That's really exciting stuff, and that is something that, you know, the knowledge is power, and with oral history, the spoken word is so dangerous and so powerful, and it has its own spirit, the word, you know, and that, for me, is something really special, something I will never be able to understand properly, and that's part of life's journey, isn't it? I'll die not knowing things about my own community, and I love that. Yeah.
That's a wonderful closing word. Thank you so much, and good luck in the competition with
All right,
Wolfram tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming.